And up first, French Connection. The Prime Minister of France visits China to increase trade and cooperation. These stories are coming up on World Insight.
Hello and welcome to this edition of World Insight. 30 minutes of news and analysis on the stories that count. I'm Zhou Yue. This week, French Prime Minister François Fillon headed for China. It was his first trip to China since he took office in 2007. Awaiting him was a big business deal. And French media said Fillon would also try to warm relations with China, which had suffered a setback over French interference in Chinese affairs.
Okay, 175 is coming for his last.
This helicopter carries the hopes of two countries. A week ago Thursday, the EC-175 completed its official maiden flight in Marseille, southeast France. Under the aegis of the French and Chinese governments, the helicopter was jointly developed and manufactured by Eurocopter and the Harbin Aircraft Industry Group.
I can say this cooperation is great. Great personal relationships have developed. There's trust, there's reliability. We appreciate very much to work together with our Chinese partners.
The new helicopter is popular. Eurocopter expects to sell 800 to 1,000 EC-175s over the next 20 years. The success of the EC-175 is exemplary. French media now says Paris is eager to revamp its relations with Beijing due to economic concerns. A recent survey showed only a third of French people believe their country will escape the financial crisis in 2010. On the other side, trade between China and France hit a record high, $38.9 billion last year, an increase of 15.7% year on year. And top-level visits have certainly injected new vigor into trade. On Monday this week, François Fillon paid his first visit to Beijing as French Prime Minister. Fillon joined Chinese Vice Premier Li Keqiang for the unveiling of the nameplate for the Taishan nuclear power plant, which will be built in South China's Guangdong province. The project is designed to generate 26 billion kilowatt-hours of on-grid energy annually. Compared with a coal-fired power plant, it can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by around 22.7 million tons a year.
The project plays a very positive and important role in promoting the use of advanced nuclear technology between China and France, strengthening bilateral trade and pushing forward the development of the overall bilateral relations.
I wish to highlight the importance of these agreements because I think our nuclear cooperation is rooted in both our republic's aim to value technological innovation and energy independence. These agreements are proof of solid relations between China and France.
Feng Zhongping, a Chinese analyst in European studies, says cooperation in green energy is the point of future economic growth for the two.
About 80% of the energy in France is generated by nuclear plants, while in the US and Japan, the rates range between 20 to 30%. In China, nuclear reactors account for 1% of energy production. During his attendance at the UN Climate Change Summit in New York in September, President Hu Jintao said China would endeavor to increase the primary energy use of non-fossil fuels to around 15% by 2020. So China is a huge market to France.
In fact, during Fillon's visit to Beijing, 12 trade deals were signed covering aviation and nuclear energy. But Fillon's China tour wasn't just about economics, it was also about politics. The visit comes as ties between China and France have gradually thawed after French President Nicolas Sarkozy's publicly embracing of the Dalai Lama in December 2008. The incident prompted China to cancel talks with the European Union. Early this year, in his 5-day trip of confidence to Europe, Premier Wen Jiabao made stops in Switzerland, Germany, Spain, Great Britain, and Belgium. When asked why France was not on his itinerary, the Premier said, "We all know why. The reason for not visiting doesn't lie with China." To ease the tension, former Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin visited Beijing in February. Raffarin said the cancellation of the EU-China summit concerning the financial crisis was serious, and France understood China's concern over stability and core interests. The relationship only started to improve when France and China both issued a statement on April 1st, in which France reaffirmed its opposition to Tibetan independence.
In the joint statement issued by foreign ministers of both countries yesterday, France made a serious commitment that it would stick to the One China policy and recognize Tibet as an inseparable part of China's territory.
Since then, the China-France relationship has been gradually returning to normal. President Hu Jintao met with his French counterpart during international summits in London in April and later in the U.S. in September. In another promising sign, French President Nicolas Sarkozy plans to attend the inauguration of the 2010 Shanghai World Expo next May. This week, in an exclusive interview with China Central Television, Ferrand said no signal was clearer than the French president's Shanghai tour next year to show the solidarity of bilateral ties.
Both France and China are concerned about the current world affairs and issues such as monetary exchange rates, the value of the US dollar, etc., which influence the international economic system. Also, we are concerned about global governance and the operations work in the United Nations. All these topics will be discussed during Sarkozy's China tour in next year. So I'm here in Beijing to prepare for the visit, to turn the page of misunderstanding forever. I've signed a series of agreements in China, and that shows China-French relations are full of vigor.
The year 2008 ended regrettably with an unnecessary quarrel between Beijing and Paris, but the tension, so contrary to the usual mutual respect and friendship between the two countries, will not last. The China-France relationship has to contribute to a strong Sino-European synergy, a prerequisite to more balanced global governance. Despite all the noise of superficial posturing, I think leaders should act according to permanent realities and strategic interests. In this sense, the late French President de Gaulle is still a source of inspiration.
On January 31st, 1964, President Charles de Gaulle announced his decision to recognize China. France then became the first among the major Western countries to opt for diplomatic relations with Beijing. De Gaulle introduced the keystone of his view of the Chinese world. China is not a nation or a nation-state, but fundamentally is a civilization, a very unique and very deep civilization. In April 2007, just days ahead of the French presidential election, Sarkozy made a surprise visit to the tomb of de Gaulle, the founder of modern France. Though the world has changed considerably in the past 45 years, de Gaulle can still be a source of inspiration when it comes to Sino-French ties.
Charles de Gaulle's vision and resolute action put the Sino-French relationship on a special trajectory. Analysts say China-French relations are not just important for both sides, but also crucial to relations between China and the European Union. As Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao said during his meeting with his French counterpart, China-France ties should maintain their stability and strengthen their strategic nature. You're watching World Insight. Coming up next, health reform in the U.S., a bitter pill to swallow or just what the doctor ordered.